Around 30-35 students are there, sir.
Okay, then let's wait for another 5 minutes. Then we'll start. Okay, we'll start. Let them join at their own time. Okay. Am I audible? Hussein?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. If there is any interruption, you can let me know. Okay. So today, uh, your course of study is the tribals of the Northeast India, particularly Northeast region. And in that, we will cover particularly different states and their tribal groups, their culture, their economy, their particularly, you can talk about occupation, all those things, those are associated with their particular day to And in this course, particularly, I think you have heard about what is the meaning of tribe, particularly. As you know, the concept of tribe differ from particularly the person to person, those who are doing research in the field of tribal studies. So, particularly, you will not find any concrete definition that is similar to everyone. Like if you are talking about particularly scientific definition or history, you have a pinpointed definition. Okay? But in tribal as such, or particularly any social science concept, has a different meaning to different author as well as different theorists. So in that context, if we talk about particularly, you can talk about tribal or any ethnic group particularly. So tribe, as such, if you look into India particularly, it is a diverse group of people, those who are actually engaged with different type of occupation as well. They are different ethnic groups. And if you particularly say what is tribe as such, or what is the definition of tribe, okay, everyone say in their own way. And in simple way, you can define as a group of people who share a common language, a common culture, a common history, often live in their own close society. Particularly, people talked about traditional society. It may be the hill region, it may be the interior region, it may be particularly cut-off region or the forest region. You can talk about it. And most of their livelihood comes from the forest product and as well as the land, particularly from agriculture. Okay. And they are the we call them native peoples, we call them Adivasi. So they don't have particularly any particular. They have their own forms of religion. Okay. So on that basis, you can define what is a tribe. So I think our previous professors have already told you. So I'm not going into details of debate of what is tribe also. So today we'll going to discuss about more about the tribes of Arunachal Pradesh, okay, tribes of Assam, and tribes of particularly Manipur. Okay, if you look into India, particularly, or if you discuss about particularly India and its tribal space, or different geographical area, as well as the whatever population of the tribe, you will find a variation from particularly north to east or particularly south to west. So, if you look into particularly northeast region, you will find much of the population constituted there are belongs to ethnic minorities or tribal groups. Okay? And particularly, if you look into particularly Arunachal Pradesh, particularly or Assam or Manipur, you will find a diverse ethnic group. Particularly, they are belong to Mongoloid community you can talk about or Mongoloid racial groups. So and if you look into the Arunachal Pradesh also, the particular the land of you can talk about the sunrise is situated in the northeast. Particularly, people visit Arunachal Pradesh particularly to look into the sunrise. Okay, particularly there is a place. Okay, you can visit that as well. So particularly prior to particularly the Northeast Frontier Agency, there is a Northeast Frontier Agency, and which attained the status of Union territory on January 23rd, 1972, was renamed actually Arunachal Pradesh in 1987. So earlier it was named as Northeast Frontier Agency, and in 1987, actually February 20, it is renamed Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, and around it is spread around 80,000, 83,000 square kilometer. I'll not go into details of this statistic, but for your purpose, I'll make it highlight and what are the most important thing. Or you can talk about a density of population 13% per square kilometer will find in the entire, particularly Arunachal Pradesh, which is not only the lowest, but also you can find a unique forms of population landscape. Okay? And it has 16 districts. In every district, you will find some of the tribal groups or other in the region. And it is mostly, you can talk about, you're talking about people visited for the to view of the sunrise. You can talk about so the topographical or geographical set of we can call mountains, we can call there are hills, valley as well as plain, but mostly it's in the mountains around. It is talked about Arunachal Pradesh is the home of particular nature, having their own lifestyle, having their own culture, having their own festival and dance, which is itself unique in the forms of particularly their way of life. And if you look into particularly 2011 census of India, scheduled tribe constitute around 68%, around 70% of the population belongs to tribal community. It means, which is 8.6% in the whole India. So you'll find the constitution of population is very large, particularly in the context of tribal people. There are around 26 major tribes, and within the tribe, you will find there are group of sub tribes around 110 sub tribal groups you will find, because when you are talking about Foraja, when you're talking about Konda, these are some of the tribals of India. But within that, in Foraja, you will find Sana Foraja, Boda Foraja, like that. There are different subgroups exist within the tribal communities. So, like that, in Arunachal Pradesh, there are around 26 major tribes. And within that tribe, you will find around 110 sub-tribal groups. And that within the sub-tribal groups, particularly, if you look into their culture and their language, the lifestyle will find absolutely difference, but some extent there will find similarity, but particularly in the context of religion, in the context of their culture, but the impact of modernization, it has been day to day by day, and you mostly find different forms of lifestyle. And the principal, the major tribes are Adi, Nisi, we can talk about Tangi, we can talk about Wancho. Okay, these are if you look into the particularly tribe and the names, it is some way or other in the forms of Mongoloid special names. Okay, because most of the community belongs to the Mongoloid group of people. Okay, and the entire Arunachal Pradesh, particularly, is divided into three cultural groups on the basis of its socio-political, religious uniforms or affinity you can talk about. And the first group belong to tribes, professor of Buddhism, those who are following Buddha particularly and their ideology and their particularly way of life. And then they talked about there is a second group. They talked about magical religious belief and practice those who are believing in Buddhism. The first group. The second group, they are talking about magical, those who are believing in magical religious beliefs and practices. And the third group, particularly, they are talking about the animist religion or the practice of headhunting. So, particularly on the basis of these three cultural groups, the whole Arunachal Pradesh society actually divided into these three groups. Besides that, there are other soft category of division, but I will not discuss open that because it will take time. So particularly, you find the three major divisions. First one is there are those who are follower of Buddhism. One is those who are follower of magic religious practices, and the third group is those who are believing animist or the particularly practicing headhunting. So, in the context of particularly flora and fauna of Arunachal Pradesh, okay, you'll find a number of rare species presented in the Arunachal Pradesh because it is a dense forest region with high economic value. Though India connected with Arunachal Pradesh, particularly geographically, it is very difficult to locate, and there is a very narrow corridor to enter into northwest India. And but beside that, it has its own flora and fauna with rich minerals as well. Okay, and particularly state having five 525 species, which are unique in nature as well as particularly you can talk about different number of medicinal plant you will find from that region because it's a dense forest, protected forest you will find, and particularly most of their the food, most of their culture are associated with the forest as well as the agricultural practices or what we call the lands. And if you look into the resources, okay, not only the forest based or the agrarian is one or they are only forms of economic activity they practice rather than you find particularly you can talk about coal, graphite, marble, oil, limestone, okay, dolomite, all the as well as the natural gases. Around 60% of the geographical region actually covered with the rich forest, and you'll find a rich biodiversity as well for that. And most of the you can talk about there are good number of hydropower generation projects. You can locate in the particularly Arunachal Pradesh. If you look into the economy, we are talking about most of the economy that particularly associated with the forest as well as the cultivation or the agricultural activity. And tradition and culture, particularly as we are talking about three separate group on the basis of socio-religious practices or the culture, and accordingly on the basis of their religion, particularly the follower of Buddhism or those who are believe in the particularly magical religious practices, okay, or any other particular practice, they are mostly these people are particularly enriched in their cultural activities, which are based on the forest, or you can talk about on the particular their religion they talked about. And the dance and songs mostly you can talk about in Assam. There is Bihu, but we're not talking about Assam right now. But there are a good number of cultural festivals that actually integrate or the form the society of Arunachal Pradesh. And mostly the important thing from which I started, like it is a tourist place, or you can talk about it's the most picturesque tourist destination of India. People regularly visit, particularly due to its natural space. And if we're talking about, let's talk about the tribes. Actually. And I will quickly summarize the thing. Like if we talked about, there is a called tribe ADI, and Adi tribes of Arunachal Pradesh particularly were known as Abor, ABOR. They are mostly concentrated in the area of Siang district, and Adi tribes belongs to the particularly Tibeto-Burman groups, considering their language, tradition, culture, and other. As we are talking about, the most are belongs to the Mongoloid group, but however, like this is the Tibeto region. You can talk about these Adi tribes also belong to the Tibeto-Burma group, considering their language, culture, and practices. And particularly, Adi have two major divisions or the subgroup. They are talking about the biomas and bomis. And by nature, particularly, these are democratic, having unique sense of their history, own history, though they don't have any particularly scriptures to look at their to look at their origin. But orally, or you can talk about there is a oral history that is well presented, and they have well organized village council that every village and tribal village and tribal from the tradition there is a village council that regulate, or you can talk about that govern the village. And in that context here the village council named it Kebang, Kebangs. Kebangs. And polyandry practice actually, sorry, polyandry is unknown, but polygamy is mostly practiced by the Adi community. Adi women are very good waivers you can talk about, or Adi in the context of handicraft. Most of their economy belong or based on the handicraft and weaving activities, and agriculture. The you can talk about the additional or the another main profession among the Adi community. And there is a festival called Mopi, Mopin. Mopi is one of the principal festival of the Adi tribe, and the festival is celebrated for 5 days, particularly in every year on the month of April. And particularly there is a you can talk about festival like Naban Bengal, Bihu of Assam, Pongal. All these cultural activities are also practiced among the Adi community. Further, if you look into the Nishi, tribes of Nishi, and Nishi, or they talk about Nisang as well. They refer to Nisang tribe or Nishi tribe, and it is derived from the word Ni, which means human being. So their original meaning of Nishi tribe is human being, and the origin of the entire tribal group is being traced by chicken, particularly called Abotani, is believed to be supreme nature. Means here they are not only talking about the human being or the from which particularly the tribe originated. Rather, they are talking about they They are originated from mythologically, and that is called Abutani, which is considered as the supreme in nature in their community. They worship the Abutani. And particularly this niche tribal groups being a primary belief in the existence of Vaishu, the spirit and thought of the words is full of Vaishu. There is a Vaishu in the jungle, and that particularly refer to on the lofty hills as well as in the shadow bushes and inaccessible caves on the top of the tall trees in the river or inside outside the house. So they are talking about the forms of spirit which existed everywhere, particularly from house to mountain to hills to river to caves. That actually the supreme supernatural nature that's control their particularly daily activities and they worship them particularly. And these niches are comparatively very poor in nature. They are lived in more poverty when talked about. Very little cultural tradition are they are less associated with the art and craft. Like previously, Adi community has had a great association with the particularly you can talk about the craft or weaving. But here you will not find in this community any type of tradition of art and craft. Particularly, their mostly main profession is agriculture, and they depend upon the all if you know the burn method of agriculture or what we call the slash method of agriculture. And major crop from niche field is they will cultivate paddy. Besides paddy, they also cultivate millets, sweet potato, and particularly as well as there are rear pigs, goats, or the particularly getting milk. So like other, as you are mentioning, other traditional groups or tribal groups, they have very associated with the particularly in craft or craft making and craft making. For however, this Nisi community, they much more associated with the agricultural activity as well as particularly rearing the particularly like cows or pigs. Then there is a tribe called the Apanthani, Apatani, which is in a book you can follow. And these Apanthani are actually settled in lower Subansiri district and known for they have some peculiar features like they are more intelligence, applicability, and traditional tech. They use more technology, traditional technology, and they're known for that. They are more intellect than other tribe in the region, and they are also known for the particular they develop their own agricultural technology that makes them identity. Sorry, that makes they make their own identity, and particularly Apatani is one of the few hill tribe who prepare irrigated or terrace cultivation instead of gym. Generally, if you talked about tribe, we generally associated with them some cultivation or the particularly Podu of we talked about. We talked about the born method of cultivation part. Generally, these Apatani groups actually did not cultivate or particularly conduct work, did not engage in that method. They particularly develop their own forms of agricultural technology, like particularly what we are talking about, how we can irrigate our field. Generally, in tribal group, they generally depend upon the nature, particularly rain, to cultivate their product, particularly or we can talk about any food. However, this tribal group have developed their, as we are talking about, they are more intelligent, so they develop their own way or method, particularly to engage with agriculture, how can cultivate more and more in different seasonal as well. So they are not only irrigating their land but also cultivating the terrace in the higher regions of the hills because they are mostly live in the hill areas. And these groups, they particularly believe in the spirits as well as the deities, and they believe in supreme being who is supposed to be creator of all. Means they are mostly believing in the religion, and they believing in the spirit as well as the deities, and they believe that all the lives are created out of water. It's mostly they are depending upon water, as well as they believe that every individual in their group or in the society is born out of the water. By evolution, gradually the Homo sapiens were created. So they are more worshipping to the water you can talk about here, and they have many major and minor festival. But the major festival they particularly often is observed is the Dari festival, DRI, Dari, generally we talk, or Dri festival we also talk, and Morum festival and the Rofi ceremony. These festivals mostly, as they are mostly associated with the agriculture rather than handicraft or any craft making, and they have new technology you can talk about. They mostly depend upon or worship water. So most of their festival is associated with the agriculture, and these tree or moran or rupee ceremony, all these things are associated with particularly, and mostly they are celebrated between January to February, particularly, and as well as you can talk about, and particularly that rupee ceremony basically with, associated with the war. This ceremony is performed when a war party was successful in killing. Means there are different forms of festival, but the first one they are talking about. But most of their festival are depend upon the agricultural activity. But the last one that what you call the particularly uh, the Roki ceremony actually celebrated after successful killing the enemy. And those were your opponents. And let's talk about other tribes as well. Like there is a Tangin tribe, and this Tangin tribe are Indo-Mongoloid group. And they speak dialect belong to the Tibeto-Burman group. And Tangin believe in the supreme creator, particularly like called Abotani, who created this art. Means here they are talking about that the whole art is created by Abotani, and Abotani is the supreme creator of our society, and who created art, supported the ancestors of human being and tigers. Particularly, they are belong to the ancestor of not only human being as well as they are referring the tigers, and they are the supreme creators. They call these are the Abotani, and their culture, their festival revolves around all the deities and spirits. Those were available near by their particularly hill, or you can talk about believing like they believe in the tiger, they believe in the forest, okay, and they follow their path. They are referring to the Abotani. Abotani, they are not only the supreme creator, but also their creator of earth as well as they are the ancestor. They are particularly supported the ancestor of tiger and human being as well. And they are basically agriculture. They depend upon agriculture or cultivation, and they live on the agricultural product. Meat they get by hunting wild animals, like killing domestic animals. Before discussing about this Tangin, you have noticed that no other tribal which have earlier discussed, they talked about the killing of domestic animal. Because, but here, Tangi, their special feature is they are particularly not only focused on agricultural activity, rather they are also particularly hunt wild animals. Generally, hunting wild animal is one of the cultural activity of the tribal group, but they said that they also kill the domestic animals for their food. They follow Jhum cultivation, that sitting cultivation. Besides paddy, which is the main agricultural crop, they argue. They also produce the maija, millet, vegetables, okay. All sorts, okay, means other agricultural product they also particularly practice. Then there is a tribe of Mismi, and in Mismi, particularly, they are mostly settled in the district of, particularly, you can talk about Lohit district of Arunachal Pradesh, and they are belong to the Mongoloid tribal of Tibeto Burman origin group, and the major Mishmi clans or Idos particularly. There are three major clans from which this tribal group actually originated. They talk about Indos, Tarans, Kamans. Okay, there are three particular clans. I mean, when you're talking about clans, you have knowledge about the clans, like how family constituted. There are different gotras. Okay, there are different kinship. Okay, and from that lineage, we try to link our clan or our kinship too. So from which clan we belongs to, they are good that there are three major Mrs. clan. These are the Indos, Tarons, and Tamans. And particularly on the basis, if you look into their religion or the belief, or the values of religion of Muslims as highly philosophical value or can be compared with the Rig Veda. Like they are mostly the religious practice or values or the ideology are associated with Rig Vedas. They also believe in the spirit, both particularly called what go malevolent and benevolent, and follow sort of magic rituals as well. They believe in the supreme God is beyond all human being and particularly therefore no sacrifice and no suffering are made to it. Generally, they did not like in other culture. You will find there is sacrifice or offering to gods in the forms of you can talk about killing the animals or doing any other activities. But here, particularly, they did not offer any sacrifice or offering to particularly their god. And these group are particularly, they are through rituals, particularly religious rituals, religious rites, religious sacrifice of these Muslim communities are conducted by the priests, particularly like in our Hindu society or in our Muslim society or Christian society. There are someone the priest who generally worship or the pray for the God, particularly for us, for others, okay. And here particularly they refer to particularly uh, the name Gok or Kamdran. They refer to those who are the priests, the name of the priest in the Muslim community, Gok and Kamdran. And particularly, they observe or particularly follow, particularly, or they particularly can talk about offer the rites and rituals to the god. Like there is a called the concept of widows recognize two classes of priests. There are two classes of priests who have different functions. There are not only the Gok or Kambrams are the one people, rather there are different group of people who they perform different religious practices, or you can talk about different forms of functions in different. And accordingly, like we have in our society, Hindu society, we find there are some of the Brahmins who particularly prepared for the marriage ceremony. There are some of the Brahmins who are particularly prepared for particularly any other activity like that. Here the priests are particularly there are different kinds of priests on the basis of different function in their society. And the Muslim communities may be termed a festive tribe and they have a lot of festival activity in their lifestyle or from day-to-day life. And we also call them a tribe of joy. Particularly, since they believe any day of the year is auspicious. And every day in each year is auspicious for a ceremony or particularly like they talked about any birds, they're talking about any animals, they are associated with that. And a Muslim village is nearly scattered in nature. Generally, if you look into tribal villages, mostly you'll find it's a communist based, fixed in geographical region. But if these Muslim communities are nearly scattered in nature as they are living in the hills. And obviously, with the chief Jew system like caste council in Indian society, you'll find like that there is a village chief system, which also they call autocratic or democratic ruling system is almost absent. Generally, in every tribal society or in our Indian villages, you will find there is a village council and traditional village council. I am not talking about the panchayat. Okay? And but here in Muslim community, you will not find that and particularly they not only depend upon the agriculture but also depend upon the handlooms. So we can talk about the handcrafts and the blood of Muslim, and they are more associated their culture, their traditions, and particularly extraction of fiber, extraction of weaving, and the work of Muslim women. While the men are famous for cane and bamboo work. Okay. So particularly women are mostly associated with the soft skill work like weaving, pipe, particular pipe, then extraction of pipe, then spinning. But here the main particularly associated with cane and bamboo work. And tribes of there is another tribe called tribes of Kamti. Okay. Kamti, or you can talk about KHNK, Kamti also you can talk about. These are the quite you can talk about industrious progressive people of Arunachal Pradesh you can talk about, and they belong to particularly Sana or Thai stock. When you talked about stock, when you talked about clan, when you talked about particularly in Kinsi particularly. They are one type of group, or you can talk about that refer to one type of group that are associated with particularly from your tradition, and they belong to Thai stock. And this Khamti tribe is population in south eastern they are settled in southeastern Arunachal Pradesh in Lohit district particularly. And as they are more particularly we are talking about progressive, we are referring to their settled, they are more dependent upon the settled agriculture. They are particularly settled in the river basin of Brahmaputra, and which made them particularly more progressive because of their agricultural activities depend upon particularly their more particularly you can talk they also depend upon fishing. Okay, and when talking about particularly religion or when talking about belief system, this means they are tied to spot or God spot. Generally, what they think. Uh, the definition of Kamti, if you look into the definition of Kamti or the literal meaning of Kamti or the meaning of word Kamti, Ka means stick, Ti means spot, also Ka means God. Stick, spot, God means they are particularly good. They are particularly referring to the when they enter into the Assam, particularly they are initially migrated from other regions and first they settle around Tengapani, one of the place in the Arunachal Pradesh. After they captured the Sadia from the then they particularly shifted to this Brahmaputra river basin. And this tribe the settled itself around Sadia, they called, and they follow their own language. The name of the language is particularly Khamti, and is the Indo-Chinese language. That's the border they share with the China, particularly. And there are also we are talking about the Mongoloid people. It's also a particular clan group from the China you can talk about, and they belong to the Thai family or Thai stock we already discussed. They have an old tradition of script of their own. Like earlier, we don't have any script in other tribal group, but this tribal group have their own language, which they call Khamti, as well as they have own tradition of or you can talk about script. And this group of people are advanced in Arunachal, as we are talking about, because they have their civilization works quite good, the forms of knowledge and art, and as well as agriculture. And while talking about religion, particularly, they follow the Buddhist ideology and particularly have regular establishment of feast, well versed in the particularly they talked about religion, those who are well versed in their particularly Buddhism and their ideology. Those who are still known their the cultural activities, or those who are particularly recondite the mysterious activities of that particular religion, they are the part of the priest. And this country have two great religious festival in each year, and one to celebrate at the birth, and another is the on the month of or the date of the birth. Means they are talking about the Gautam Mitra. So there is major two festival, and that two festival also associated with the birth and death ceremony or the date of particular date of the Gautam Buddha. And particularly when talking about they are mostly settled in the Brahmaputra river basin, they are mostly yes, they are agriculturalists and they are more advanced in agriculture and they have acquired agricultural pattern when and how to particularly cultivate land or when to particularly which product or the particularly agricultural products is suitable for which land. So they particularly they grow paddy, they grow mustard, they grow potato, they grow varieties of vegetable. They also rear cows, buffaloes, other domestic animals for their own use. And particularly they are talking about in marriage concept and particularly this family observed plan exogamy as well as the tribal endogamy forms of marriage. And while talking about the inheritance means transfer of the wealth to one person to other in a family, mostly it is distributed among the sons equally rather than women or the female member of the family. And there is another tribe called tribe of Nokte, and these Nokte people are settled in Tirap district of Arunachal Pradesh, and Nokte society is patriarchal, mostly male-dominated society, and it will particularly you can talk about their chief, those who are actually regulating the village or the council, they are called Lawan. And the most important feature of this community actually is the physical division of the village. The village is scattered around its geographical location, and it is called as chums, 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 and particularly all clans with a particular chum have a common name, like our titles, okay, like that. All clans with a particular chums have a common name. Means those physical division in a village have a on the basis of clans, and they have each clan has their separate name. And these Nuktas believe in the existence of supreme being, who particularly viciously called Janban or Jongban or Teshang, who is ambivalent, having both good and evil aspects. Since they are particularly believing in the supreme being, and they call them Janban, or they also call them Jamban or Teshang, who is ambivalent, having both good and evil aspects. And particularly, uh, they also follow the Vaishnav gene, which is carried to the Nokta area by one Naga society. And if you look into the populations, their family generally constitute of father, mother, their unmarried children as well. The son, who the expect the elders who leave the particular ancestral house after marriage. And generally, their pattern of family that they are the sons who get married, they have to leave their ancestral house after the marriage, establish their new house. Means every marriage brings a new family setup we can talk about. And the married son are, however, permitted to stay in the ancestor with their wives if there is a sufficient accommodation. There is a possibility if there is a accommodation. Generally, their accommodation structure is very small. So, generally, for to accommodate, it is very difficult to accommodate newlywed couples. So, generally, they particularly leave their house. But if a family have good accommodation, there is a possibility then they can stay there. So their religious, particularly ceremonies, if you look into, and the most important ceremony of this Nuktas actually is called Juban Chow. It is performed once or twice in a year in his village based on circumstances, one or two times. And time of the performance of the ceremony varies a good deal. If there is some good deal, there is a happy moment, they generally come together and celebrate. Particularly, it is common with the harvesting are mostly depend upon the agriculture, and particularly they worship, particularly observe this festival because during time of harvest of millet. So rather than paddy, they are mostly cultivating the millets. And there are other tribal as well. If you look into Wanchos, one of the another tribal group, who mostly stayed in the Tirap district of Arunachal Pradesh, and mostly the villages are controlled by hereditary chief. Means here, if you look, this Wanchos village are controlled by the hereditary chief, and particularly Wanchos have a vague belief in the supreme god or even called Rang. They believe in the Rang RNG, is they call them as god, and particularly and Rang is the creator of the world they talked about. They believe that the sky god Rang is internally opposed by there is a two group like every society has or every group has in finding every institution there are two group of people like that. They talked about there is two group of God. One is God Rang, another is Bow Rang, and God Rang is the was in the sky. I hear they talked about the God Rang earth. One is worship for that, another is worship for the sky. And the smallest unity in this Vanchu society is the family, consisting of father, mother, children. They also follow the joint family system. The grown-up boys of the village, actually, after the boys grown up, whether it is boys or the girls, they have to settle in the bachelor dormitories. There is no separate dormitories, particularly they talked about. Sorry, there is no separate dormitories for the girls, but there is separate dormitory when the boys are younger. They will be shifted to other dormitories. There is a there are member of Pancho festival. Very important festival which varies according to area of inhabitants. As the area particularly depend upon the inhabitation means those clan groups which are settled in different part of the village in Vanshu villages on the basis of their establishment, on the basis of their geographical feasibility, actually they observe different festival in their settled areas and once women are expert, particularly when you talked about livelihood, when you talked about division of labor, and these Vanshu women are expert in spinners and particularly spinning activity and weavings. Vanshu have a keen sense of colors and combination. Vanshu are also known for wood carving. Really, they are well known for wood carving, and Vanshu are good craftsmen for manufacture of cane, bamboo items, as well as blacksmith as well. And one should have number of dances of various occasion. And particularly there is a dance called Hamson and is performed after construction of chief house. Generally, in other tribal group, you will find that there is a festival on the basis of their agricultural activity, or there is a festival on the basis of their religion. But here, when the chief house, who is the chief of the village, when the house is finally constructed, then there is a dance performed by the group of members of this tribe, and they call this Hamsun. Okay? And another dance that they talk about, uh, Dunge Thanu, is performed when number of chiefs lineage die. Means most of the festival is associated with the chief. If there is a such an activity in the chief house, if there is a construction of chief house, if there is someone dies in the chief lineage, there is a function or there is a festival. Then there is another tribe called Tangshan, and Tansa people belong to once again that Tibeto-Burman group occupying the particularly eastern hill trap or district of Arunachal Pradesh. And once again, they lived in the hill areas. There are different sub-tribal groups. They talked about Musangs, Ikins, Kimising. There are different, as we are talking about different sub, there are 110 sub-tribal groups in Arunachal Pradesh. And these Tancha also have some sub-tribal groups. And they believe in the invisible supremacy. Those who are like AR, you can talk about particularly, and who lives in the heaven and personified by the name of Sakya, Pra, okay, Ran, okay. These are forms of supreme God they talked about. And once again, the profession particularly is not hereditary. It is shifted. Generally we talked about in Indian society. People believe or follow the traditional hereditary system of occupation, but here this group did not follow the hereditary forms of occupation. Anyone, whether man or woman, having acquired scientific knowledge or procedure, they can follow different path, particularly they are more associated with the craft and handicraft. And they believe in the curing diseases by the propitiating spirits who they consider to be responsible for various maladies. In here they are talking about to cure diseases. They are also believing in the supreme power, those who are creating the diseases, and they celebrate particularly three major agricultural festivals in a year before sowing, before particularly after sowing, then when the seeding grows after 30 sowing. So according to most of the tribal group, you'll find associated with agricultural activity. Then another tribe is called Monpa, and Monpa and Mongoloid group look particularly speaking Tibeto-Burman language. As you know, every tribal group has a language like that. These Monpas also have their own language, and mostly they settled in the Kemang district, belong to particularly Arunachal Pradesh. Considering their style of dress pattern and usages, language which is very difficult, particularly different from the other tribal groups, and they are mostly associated with the Bhutan tribal. Sorry, mostly associated with the Bhutan way of life, Bhutan way of culture, Bhutan way of dressing style, and they follow that. As they are following the Buddhism, they are also follower of the Buddhism, which came latter. Many Monpas believe the traditional religion known as born religion. Their traditional religion was born religion. However, as it is sharing most of the boundary or the geographical boundary with Bhutan. They are so they are in Spain. You can talk about their way of lifestyle are more impacted by the Buddhist activities, and they are following particularly the tradition of Bhutan or the they believe in the lifestyle of the Bhutan. And Bon culture, which is the traditional culture of this Monpha community, is considered an original culture of Monpha tribe. And Monpha are expert in weaving woolen, particular carpets. They are traditional way. They are mostly depend upon the craft activities, and they are more expert in the paper making. Generally, we are writing different things in the note, reading the books with in a paper. Now we are more technological advanced, but mostly these people are expert in the making of the paper. This is the unique style. We can talk about important way of their lifestyle. And they are lovers of the song, music, dance, and most of the lifestyle moves around these cultural festivals they talked about. And every cultural festival has a carry different meaning as well as and these tribal group particularly there is a principal festival called Targia, and it is celebrated every 11 month in each year and to drive out the evil spirit. Whatever evil spirit existed in their inhabitant areas, they celebrate to particularly how can particularly elevate these evil spirits from their area. So there is another tribe called Akka. Okay, Akka tribe is found mainly in Kemanga district of Arunachal Pradesh. In their own dialect, Akka call themselves Russo. The term Akka is derived from the Assamese word Anka, literally meaning painted. Means what they are talking about that their bodies are generally painted in different. You can talk about structures and different forms of cultural activity. Generally, Akka speak their own dialect and belong to Tibeto-Burman group. And mostly, if you look into the Arunachal Pradesh, and their tradition and culture mostly associated with the Tibeto-Burman group, and their dialect, particularly language, associated with the Tibet-Burman group as well. According Akka particularly, Buslao is the supreme creator. There is a particularly ideology that Buslao is the supreme creator who is creator of the living. Those who are staying in our society or the living with the individual, they created by the Muslims. In addition to the supreme creator, they have a number of spirit as well. They believe on that as well. So if you look into there are other tribes, Miji tribe, there is a Padma tribe, particularly there is Minyong tribe, you can look into it. There is the Memba tribe, there are Yobini tribe as well. And mostly if you look into these tribal groups and their tribal culture, they are mostly belongs to the particularly Tibeto-Burman group. Their culture or particularly their way of lifestyle mostly associated with the craft, or mostly associated with the particularly agriculture active. You'll find some of the more advanced in agriculture, some are more advanced in the craft making. But like that, if you look into the Assam particularly, in the northeast region, Assam is considered as the way to the northeast India because through Assam we are entering to the northeast India, and it is settled in the full. Look into the physical structure of Assam or the geographical structure, and it is located in the foothill. The Himalaya is populated known as land of blue hills and red rivers. Assam as present spread all over around 70,000 square kilometer. And if you look or decode the meaning of Assam or the literal meaning, what you mean by Assam, which is generally yearless we talked about, which the value of the particular item is yearless we talked about, and it is known as Royogo Tisa in a particularly astronomical way. And they also talk about it is the Lord of Law in Hindu mythology. So Assam has been meeting of ground of diversity. As you're talking about Arunachal Pradesh have a diverse ethnic group, like that, this Assam also have a diverse ethnic group since its emergence, and thus they are not only having their own native population, besides that, they also inhabitants of different migrants, but because it is sharing border with different regions like Bangladesh has its border with Assam, Bhutan, other countries. So China as well as you can talk about, which is near to particularly uh, Malaysia, other part of the country you can talk about other geographical locations. So in that context, we can talk about it is sharing border with different countries, and so that it is a hotspot for particular immigrants. And various communities stay within that particularly a state. And it has its own culture. As you know, Bihu is the common festival in Assam. So they mostly belong to the Indo-Mongolian groups, Dravidian groups you find somewhere, Tibeto-Burman as well as find, Aryan group as well as find. And around there are 28 districts, particularly which constitute the Assam. And Guwahati is the capital, as all of you know. Okay, and it is called as the most agrarian state of the Northeast India. And most paddy is the most cultivated crop. Besides that, they also cultivate maija, millets, sugarcane, potatoes. So, if you look into the population of Prestige particularly, and it is around 12, only 12.44% of the total population of the state belong to the ST communities. And like Bodo, major tribal are Bodo, Missings, Mikits, Rapa, Lalung, Dinsa, Deodi. Okay, so around eight major tribal group actually we find in the Assam. Out of the total ST population, which is 97% are now, though they, as you all of know, when someone is asked what is the religion of tribal group, generally it is confusion because they have their own religion. They observe or worship hills, particularly forests, okay, streams. But nowadays they are more associated with the Hindu. They're started particularly influenced by different Hindu ideologies or Muslim ideologies or Christian ideologies. And if you look into their population, and most belong to particularly Hindu community and other are belongs to the Christian community. 90% belongs to the Hindu and around 8% that belongs to Buddhist. And now there are some other Buddhist follower, Muslim follower as well. And particularly into borders particularly as such. And the borders belong to the Indo-Mongolian ethnic group. And once again, there are also Tibeto-Burman language group as well. And among STs, Bodo constitutes nearly half of the ST population, which is around nearly half, around 40% of the ST population belong to Bodo community in the Assam. And Bodos are the considered as the earliest settlers or the earliest settlers of Assam and are mostly their culture loving, like we are celebrating particularly Bihu, and they are mostly associated that. And this Bodo community are mostly settled in the Kokrajhar district of Assam. And the family structure or the marriage structure is mostly patriarchal, and they prefer to live in the joint family, and generally marriage within the same clan or the same kinship group is prohibited. Widow remarriage is accepted, but if someone is remarrying someone after the case of their husband or the wife, she lost her right to the property, that particular house. And if a couple wants to divorce, it is placed before the gathering. There is their own chief of that village or the community, and they called it the Samaj. The act of divorce is symbolized it in a bitterly, and which is sorry, tearing of bitterly. People they have to tear a bitterly, and which is called Pithoi Lai Vishnu in the Boda language. So they have their own language, and like other tribal communities, if you compare Arunachal Pradesh, they have different language, and it is particularly there is no script, but Bodo language has a script. They are developing their script there also. And agriculture is the main occupation, or the we can talk about source of livelihood, source of earning. And they cultivate ahu and salipadi. Generally, they cultivate ahu and salipadi, which has its own cultural symbol, which has its own cultural importance actually. And Bodo language, particularly, it is derived from the Devanagari script, and generally what we every the most of the Indian or the language of India is associated with the Devanagari state, and same, the Bodo language has its own, but it is used in the Devanagari script, and the Bodo, there is a, these tribal group are more advanced, they are more knowledgeable, they have formed their own Sahitya Samaj, if I talk the Bodo Sahitya Samaj, has contributed largely toward development of the Bodo literature. They have their own literature group who are looking at how can develop their own publication in their language, or the particularly or the stories you can talk about, or how can develop their language. In they are basically animists, and but later they are converted to Hinduism and other religion. They believe in particularly kind of a natural thing as well. And now they are mostly worshipping the Lord Shiva. And the most of the staple food of these Bodos is rice, we talked about. And they also prepare homemade rice beer, which is called a Jumai, Jumai. And it is mostly famous in their region, and it is particularly prepared in every home in the Bodo community. And the Bodo have been demanding now. If you look into Northeast conflict, I'm not linking right now, but we'll discuss that one. But somewhere every tribal community in the Northeast region, you will find there is a battle going there. And the battle is not only to particularly their own identity, rather they are demanding their separate identity in the forms of different states, different particularly like Bodo, they are demanding Bodo land, and since last 4 to 5 decades, like there are different, they are established different groups like Bodoland Liberation Tribal Force, or particularly Bodoland Territorial Autonomous District, or you can talk about different Bodoland tribal to the council structure. So different group they have, and they try to demand. They're demanding for the separate Bodoland. Like that, there is another missing tribe. Name is missing. Science. And these tribal groups actually they also called as or known as Miris or Tanis, and they belong to once again that Tibeto-Burma struggle group. The culture and tradition of the Mission tribe are quite similar to that of Adi tribe. Okay, so in Arunachal Pradesh there is a tribal called Adi tribe of Arunachal Pradesh, and like the same way here also, particularly the culture and tradition of Misi tribe is associated with the Adi tribe. They are found in the district of Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, Jorhat, okay, and Golaghat, other districts as well. They are settlement in the banks of the river of Brahmaputra and the other rivers of, particularly banks of other rivers in Assam. And their occupation or particularly income or their general concept of agriculture and fishing, particularly they are as they are mostly settled in the river basins, and they are mostly their occupation associated with agriculture and fishing. They speak Mishi language, they have their own language, and further Mishi is also divided in different subgroup or the sub-clan group as we are talking about, Tamar, Pejia, Siam, Delu, different group. And the culture of missing is considered widely as rich and as diverse as well as colorful. They follow different paths, and there are various festivals they observe, various you can talk about dances, songs they have, and dances are called taxum, and the songs particularly is missing local dialect are called as nitam, Nitom. And there are different types of Nitam as well song, different types of dance, and it is once again most based on their occupation or the agriculture. They also particularly observe three main views. Bihu is a common festival in Assam, and there are three main Bihus, and Assam particularly observed, and Mag Bihu, Rohok Bihu, and Kati Bihu. And these three views are also observed by the missing communities. And missing cultivate paddy, maija, mustard seeds, variety of potatoes. Okay. So as well as the fishing one of their time occupation. They have their own governing system to control their territory, to control their people, and they called it as the Nigam, Migom, and they called this Nigam as the king of the particular their land or their nominal head of the. particularly their region or their group. And particularly today, if you look into the missing, they have their own autonomous council. Like in Bodoland, they are trying to demand separate Bodoland like that, with different forms of organization. They demanding that. Like that, missing have their own organization, like autonomous council called uh, missing autonomous council. This is the result of an agreement signed in 14th June 1995 between Assam government and the missing autonomous demand committee. This autonomous council has no geographical boundary under its jurisdiction, so it is called as satellite council. So everything, whatever is or particularly organized, governed in the missing community, it is governed by that missing autonomous council. So government is not to intervene in that council, and it is a agreement between particularly missing autonomous as well as the Assam government. So there is no boundary, particularly geographical boundary between within that district or the state. And there is other groups as well, as you can talk about Karbis, you can talk about particularly Rabhas, you can talk about particularly Kacharis, okay? And let's talk about another type like Dinsa tribe. Dinsa is as well as a known tribe, and they are mostly settled in the North Kachara Hill district, and they are called, this is the land of Dinsa, and they are also found in the district of Karbi Anglong and Chacharis. Ethnically, they belong to the Indo-Mongoloid group or the stock or the clan, and linguistically, on the basis of their language, they are also belong to the same clan, particularly Tibeto-Burman group. And the literal meaning of this Dinsa tribe, particularly, is the son of the big river. So once again, if you look into another tribe, those who are most worshipping the river, they are the son of the big river, means that found water, big and sun. And thus they consider themselves as the descendant of mighty Brahmaputra. They are settled in the Brahmaputra, and their name is referred to a particular river associated with the river, a big river, and a big river is the Brahmaputra, and they are the descendant of this Brahmaputra, which indicate that they might have lived in the bank of the river prior to the establishment of the capital Dimapur. Okay, so now which is in Nagaland located, but the capital Dimapur, which is earlier was part of Assam. So particularly, so mostly they think that earlier they have lived bank of the river prior to establishment of the Dimapur. So that's why they are referring to the big river, particularly Brahmaputra, which are there. And they are patriarchal in nature, patrilineal in nature, as well as the local people. And the women do not have equal say in the society like men. And there is a inequality exists within that society between male and female. The practice of monogamy or the marriage by negotiation is common among them. Since monogamy forms of marriage, like, or you can talk about marriage monogamy, means there is no second marriage we can talk about, as well as when there is a marriage, it is always negotiated among the people, and you have to given the bride price which is existed in Windsor, and they also practice the Kalki marriage system, and which is marriage outside the community is looked down upon. Yes, they did not consider generally if you are marrying outside of that group. Okay, and if they are considered, it is a down, look down, and they go even to extent driving the couple out of the house. They are not accepting if are marrying out of the clan, out of the group. And the house of Dinsas are made of timber with more plastic bamboo walls, thatched roof. They have bachelor dormitory, and the dormitory they call it as Nodran, and for the boys, and for girls they called it Nodrans. Sorry, Nagahoja. And there are different Nagahoja and Malahoja, different forms of, we can talk about leadership skill as well. They have traditional village headman called Puna, particularly they depend upon the traditional element of the governance system and who discharge the responsibility and duties with the help of one of the assistant and the assistant called as DLO. And agriculture once again is the main occupation. They practice particularly wet vertical cultivation in low plain areas, particularly what we call zoom cultivation and cultivation in area in hill areas as well. They grow paddy, maija, mustard, millet, cotton, orange as well. Uh, Rice is the staple food of this community, and rice beer, what they called as joe, the joe we can talk about, is their favorite beverage, which they prepare at home. So once again, if you look into the whether it is Arunachal Pradesh, whether it is Assam, one of the major component of their culture is the rice beer, and they have a local doctor, and they call that Pathari, and who predict and cure the diseases by his magical power, or you can talk about spiritual power. They have rich cocktails or culture that describe their culture and lifestyle in the daily basis. And they depend, particularly, they believe are of the animists. They also follow the Hindu society. There is another tribal called the Diori tribe, and this Diori are one of the four division of Chutias, and who themselves are sub-branch of the Bodo group. Once again, this Diori tribe are the part of the Bodo group community, and their language of the linguistic aspect once again depend upon the Burman group of people, Burman group of clan. Originally, the Deori tried to live along the bankside of the river Sambhasri of Arunachal Pradesh. Presently, that are found in the district of Lakhnipur, Digrigarh, Sivasagar, Jorat, and Sonitpur of Assam. Their simplicity and hospitality particularly helps to great extent in maintain the good relationship with the neighborhood communities. So particularly they are more simple, more hospitality. Their culture is particularly conducted with high values. There are three divisions of this particularly every tribe, namely Dibangi, Burgungaya, and Tengapani. Like there are three divisions, the subgroup of the caste, tribe, and Sariya Mata. Sariya Mata is a unique institution in the Deori community, and through this institution, that the Sariya Mata, they observe particularly or the help the village members, and like that, particularly, it is mostly any kind of work there is, you can take the help of particularly people through Saryamata. Like that, it is for men. For women, there are different group. They call the Maiki Saryamata, which is basically women, a group of women who extend their helping hand to the needy persons. So there are other type, Lalung tribe you can talk about. Okay. So in shortly, you can talk about Lalung tribe. Okay, it's also known as Yuas are the major tribes of Assam, and they are found in the district of Nuagaon, Marigaon, some parts of particularly Kampur, Lakhnipur, Jorat, Dhemji, Karbi, and Golongaon, Assam. Okay, and the major festival of the particularly Yuas are the Mal Puja, Vishnu Kanadi Puja, Thal Puja, Sani Puja, Jankan Puja, and the house particularly. So more their culture if you find in this tribal group, cultural activities of the festival. The house where they build particularly, it has a religious value. They refer to as a burger. The priest who is known as Giyati, like the earlier in the previous uh, Deuri tribe, there is different forms of name, as well as in particularly this tribe, Tiwa tribe, particularly, you find the name of the doctor, particularly, sorry, one minute. The priest who worship the god, in particularly Yuva community, which is called as Gyati, and they perform the religious ceremony, religious functions. And the Jolo, there is a concept of Jolo, which is an expert in the religious matter, particularly. They assist the Gyati. Means Gyati is the main priest, and the Jolo is the assistant priest in that community. So the Lulang or the Chiwa, what they call, lived in the plain lands, and those from the particularly those who are living in the field differ from the racing pattern. Means the racing pattern between the Tiwa or Lalunga, what we call, it is differ on the basis of those who are living in the plain region and those who are living in the hilly terrain of the state. So if you look into the whole of the Assam tribal communities, and they have tried to, they preserve. Ultimately, they have preserved their unique identity along with the tradition, culture, practices, which you can refer to different research articles. And but one cannot deny that the influence of present day, like you can talk about the new forms of media, industrialization, you can talk about modernization. It has a serious impact on the youngster. As a result, if you look into the literature, you will find that their way of lifestyle has been, you can talk about change from their tradition and particularly and their culture. It has been mixed up with the modern forms of culture. And you can talk about as they're following the modernization, or you can talk about Sanskritism. You can talk about different forms of. You can talk about how it has impacted the globalization process as well. But Assam has also witnessed number of communal disturbance as well. I'm talking about it is mostly northeast region as a communal disturbance between the ethnic groups as well as for their own identity as well as for the separate statehood. They have good number of resources we can talk about. You can talk about fields, good number of flora and fauna you can talk about. And the government and the civil society organization have been continuously engaging in that particular regions different within different ethnic to minimize the you can talk about conflict as well as how can maintain the peace and balance in the society. So Assam or whether it is Assam, whether it is Arunachal, South Pradesh, will find different ethnic groups particularly. And the beauty not only lies of the Assam in the different of ethnic group, rather the way that is observe different culture and festival. Besides that, the rich resources in the forms of forest or the hills or the we can talk about any the natural resources and the peaceful existence of different ethnic group itself is another unique feature of the Assam. So we'll take 5 minutes break, then we'll start about particularly the tribes of Manipur. Then we'll particularly finish today's class. Then we have some, if any doubt, any question, we can discuss. Let's take this for another 5 minutes. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, okay. Take it. Okay, let's start. As we're talking about tribes of Northeast India. So, like Arunachal Pradesh, like Assam, Manipur has also a different composition of ethnic group or the native people. Generally, we also call them Adivasi native people, so indigenous people. Some are called also PBTGs. Okay, so uh, there are major three ethnic groups actually constitute the people of particularly Manipur, and they are Metis, Chinjumi, Kuki, and the Nagas. So generally, three ethnic groups you will find in the Manipur. One is Metis, another is Chinjumi Koi, sorry, Chinjumi Kuki, and the Nagas. And this Metis particularly and are the majority community and in Manipur and comprising almost 60% of the total population of the state. And the Pangal, the Manipur Muslims which you term as Pangal, and make up the rest of the approximately 6% particularly. And those Naga and Chinjunki Kuki tribes belongs to 36%. So most of the population of this state particularly they are dominated by the particularly Metis. And Metis are and the Pangler inhabit the plain Imphal Valley and the tribal community lies scattered along the region of the state. So Metis particularly and the Manipur Muslims particularly, they generally inhabited in the plain areas of the particularly or of the Imphal Valley, and tribal communities generally scattered around the hill region of the state. And Chin, Jomi, Kuki, and the Nagas particularly, they are the umbrella names of various tribes. So particularly, Chin, Jomi, Kuki, and the Nagas are the major tribal groups or their head names you can talk about. And these are the umbrella names. Within that, you will find different tribal groups existence of different tribes. Around 33 tribal groups are existed, particularly in the state of Manipur, and they are referred to Amil, Anal, Chiru, Klothe, Gangte. There are different all these 33 are within that 33 group we will find as well as the sub tribal groups. So you will find in your book like their Jimmy, their Joe, their Puran, their Rathe, their Sima, their Sukte. Okay, there are different forms of different types of tribal group. And Manipur, if you decode the name of the Manipur like we did, like Assam, so here Manipur literally refers to the jewel land. Okay? Jewel land. So this is mostly fascinating name you can talk about, and you will find different resources. And the name does not refer, does not do not refer only a jewel in the sense, rather jewel in the sense of everything. Its people, its culture, its resources. Okay. Or you can talk about its environment, its geography. Will find a diversified nature, and it is spread around particularly 20,000 kilometers. And particularly, if you look into the state, has its nine administrative districts, particularly which are Imphal East, Imphal West, Bishanpur, Senapati. Okay, there are other districts as well. And particularly, the state has been surrounded by blue hills with an oval shaped valley they called at the center, rich in art and craft, rich in art and tradition, rich in art and culture, dance, songs, and the other particularly they are known for its natural space or natural glory and multiple. They are jeweled not in the sense of their communities, but they are jeweled in the sense of their culture, and it is a melting part of different culture. They are not only you will not find in the culture of these three subgroups, rather you will find a impacted culture of we can talk about other nations or the neighboring nation as well. So if you look into the tribal custom in the particular state and the tribal custom and practice particularly define very essence of the tribal society in the Manipur region and particularly the customary laws. The laws which we practice on the day-to-day basis, particularly regulate not only the day-to-day life of the community member with regard to issues such as governance, marriage, land ownership, everything in the tribal society, whether it is governance, whether it is marriage, whether it is religious, whether it is chieftaincy, whether it's clan issues, whether in social issues in their society, whether it is inheritance issue of properties, whether it is particular administrative justice, everything. Everything is regulated by the customary laws. Okay. So if you look into the definition of customary laws, what to mean by customary laws, it differ from the individual to individual as well as scholar to scholar as well as the community to community. And one of the definitions talked about the customary laws are customs that are accepted as legal requirement or obligatory rules of conduct. जो हम बोलते हैं ना रीति परंपरा प्रथा all those things, okay, whatever we do, okay, whatever we believe that are so vital, so important to our society, and that they call the particular customary law. Another researcher told that customary law as local recognized principle. जो हम लोग जो जो सोसाइटी के लोग होते हैं ना, जो मानते हैं, जो जो प्रथा और परंपरा को फॉलो करते हैं, उसको बोलते हैं कस्टमरी लॉ. And these are locally recognized principles and more specific norms and rules which are orally held. Generally, there is no written format of law. Like we have in our state, in our judicial system, we have laws and it is written. But customary laws are never written. They are orally transmitted from one generation to other. And these are actually recognized by that community institution or the local institution which is constituted by that particular tribal groups. And so if you look at most of the tribal society are actually regulated by the customary laws established by their own institution, which is orally transmitted from one generation to other. And from that customary laws, they are regulated, their society is orderly maintained, and anything happen in the society, it is particularly guided by that guideline. And if you look into the administrative structure of this Manipur society, Manipur tribal society, and particularly among the Kuiching Mizo tribal group, traditionally of they talked about the craftsmanship particularly, and the chief, who is the hereditary in nature, transformed from one generation to other, and who had almost complete control in terms of land holding and administration justice of the jurisdiction or geographical area, and he was assisted by the constitution of Means the customary law actually, which is practiced among the particularly Manipur tribal group, it has controlled by the headman. Headman is who are the chief of the household, sorry, chief of the village you can talk about, or chief of that community. And it was the chief, it was the headman who own the land on behalf of the particularly village of community. Everything, whatever land, particularly in the context of land, and the whatever land is having with a community or village, it is always named under the headship of the chief. In the recent context, however, there has been a gradual changes in the administration activities, the structural changes due to election. You can talk about, okay, and it not necessarily represent all the clans. They talk the chief of the village, the ex-officio chairman, means latter means there is a changes in the customary laws. The changes in the mentioned earlier it was hereditary transfer, but nowadays this is elected member of that particular community, and the particularly the chief, the earlier chiefs, the previous chiefs, they are just the member of that particular committee. And the Naga tribal, on the other hand, is fully administered by the village council. So the first tribe, the Kuki Chino Micho, the tribal group, they are mostly guided by the customary law and particularly governed by the chief. But however, and now it has changed. But in the Naga community, it is fully administered by the village council, duly elected and representative member of the groups, particularly of that villages. So from one village, different group of particular different members are elected, or so-called they also particularly can talk about represented member of that their clan group, and they constitute the village council. And the village council perform both administrative and judicial functions. So they not only particularly administer the village, but also if there is change, they solve the particularly rule or the regulation. It is usually the eldest member of the clan who is inducted into the village council. Means who is the eldest member of that group of that clan? They are generally inducted into the group. Means they are generally representing the group in the village council, and the village chief only a nominal head of the village, while the administrative power is the hand of the village council. There is a two concept. One is village chief. Village chief is the have the administrative power, whereas the village council has a control over the administrative power or the on the village chief. Okay, so though if you look into the land ownership pattern particularly, it is briefly mentioned that there are certain differences you find in the overall Manipur, but the Mizo community, the Chin Kulki Mizo community group of tribal village chief is the authority over the village land. Like in the first tribe, what we call the particularly 1 minute, particularly the Kuki-Chino Mizo, as most of the land is under the headship or under the particularly head, like that particularly in the Naga tribe particularly, the practice system of communal land owners. It is owned by the community. It is owned by every individual of the community. But here, in the first one, in the Chin Kukimicho group, it is controlled by the chief or the village headman. But Naga tribe has a communal land ownership. Ownership right of land can be given to any person, anytime, or any clan of the group with explicit knowledge of understanding that is going to be used. Means, but if you have better knowledge on the land, on the basis of we can talk about cultivation, its procuration, anything. If you have knowledge, you have expert on that, they will transfer to you. And particularly, the Naga are not allowed to sell land. So you cannot sell the land to any individual. And if you look into their clan system, inheritance generally, one of the important or the major aspect of tribal society in Manipur is that uh, uh, they give much more importance to the clan group or the kinship group. And clans are particularly made of the member of families who trace their ancestor to a particular person or group. How we trace? There is a family tree. We trace where belong to which group, which member are there, what our particularly forefathers. We trace like that. Clan is just like that. And a clan group of people united by actually or perceived kinship or descent. And in tribal society of Manipur particularly, the family inheritance mostly goes to the eldest son. Particularly जो बड़े बेटे होते हैं घर में उसके पास ही जाता है जो इनहेरिटेंस पावर एंड पर्टिकुलरली in both tribal society particularly society the right of inheritance to women is very limited, and the power of women is very limited, almost nil you can say that. And uh, in certain cases particularly inheritance right may be gifted to anyone who took care of the parents during their old age, whatever it is soon, son or daughter. So, as crime and administrative justice we are talking about, mostly it is associated with the customary laws we have already discussed. And in context of marriage and divorce, particularly, arranged marriage is encouraged among the tribal groups in the particularly Manipur, and forced marriage generally or marriage by kidnapping may not invite any serious punishment, but still practice some of the by some of the sub-tribal groups in different umbrella terms of these three clan groups, and serious taboos particularly relating to marriage exist. And in tribal society in Manipur, marriage between a close relative is strictly prohibited. You cannot marry within the close group or the close clan group, and for that particular, it is not allowed. And if we were talking about divorce in Manipur, and it is not generally encouraged, but they do take place in the tribal societies. And if women particularly fail to bear a child, and it is in that context only. and you will not find any forms of divorce in that society. And when we are talking about the customary laws and the Christianity among the tribal, one of the major Northeast issue is that most of the tribals have been converted to Christians. And whether it is tribal of Manipur or other parts, and they are mostly belong to Christian communities. And Christianity has particularly is one of the most pertinent force or the Christianity mission one of the pertinent force that have contributed to change the taken particularly the landscape of the tribal society in the Manipur. Okay. And Christianity particularly brought in a spirituality that went beyond everyday practice of the tribal community. Particularly, the day-to-day life has been changed. It has been particularly followed by the Christian way of life. And you can talk about to tree worship, worship to the animal, worship to the natural event has been totally. You can talk about traditional futures followed by this tribal community has been vanished because now they are preferred to be particular types of the Christian religious practice. And coming to particular Christianity, among the tribals of Manipur we are looking into, has not altogether wiped out traditional, it is wiped out totally traditional institution, traditional practices. Okay, some of the customs which are based on land still practiced, but still the lifestyle has been seriously changed. And even modern education as well as socio-economic development of different tribal groups, other aspects of their modern life have not completely led to abandon particular these laws and practices. And recent time there has been insurgents. If you're looking into Manipur news, you will find different insurgents looking into. It is still going on in different, particularly between the Metis and other communities, and we can have a like a discussion on that. But if you look into what are the major concerns, particularly which are confronting by the tribal societies or the tribal societies in Manipur, most of the serious concern as it is sharing border with the neighboring countries. Okay, so major issue is the HIV as well as the drugs, and as the area particularly the Thailand, Myanmar, or Laos, particularly Golden Triangle for the drug activity, and that has actually somewhere or other impacted the money. Okay. The drug trade itself has exposed many youth in the Manipur and to the drugs. For drugs, there is an increase of corruption, failure of the state to crack the drug practices that another challenge, particularly the context of Manipur. Okay, besides drug, alcohol, and the narcotics, substance abuse, whatever we call it. Okay. It has seriously impacted on the use of syringe for use of syringe by a number of people that has created the spread of HIV. Poor economic condition further worsen the situation. Patriarchal family structure have another impact on this. So trading exposure, particularly the drug trading exposure, as well as to expose these drugs has dragged the youth into getting addicted to the drugs. So that's a major you can challenge you can talk about. Besides that, the insurgence going on between different communities that is a serious challenge that must be looked into before any proceed to any development activity or anything. And if you look at the insurgents particularly, and the state has also been threatened by insurgents group because this Northeast state has different, particularly you can talk about different armed group as well, and particularly three dimension of particularly different violent still going on if you look into the news. Um, conflict is not new, actually. It is a long history behind that, and the major three ethnic groups, whether it is Métis, whether it is Nakas, whether it is Kuki, they have their own insurgent group actually, and there are over 30 insurgent group lived in the particular Manipur. We can talk about People's Liberation Army present here, United National Liberation Front is there, Manipur Liberation Front is there, okay. Revolutionary Joint Committee is there, Kuki Democratic Movement is there. So around 30 insurgent group is there. So secondly, another major challenge in the Manipur is the corruption in the state that combines between corrupt official and the insurgent. Because when there is a drop trade practice going on, there is involvement of some of the officers. That's created another hurdles, particularly for the youths as well, and where the insurgent group actually seriously involved in these activities. They not only threaten the common people, they also threaten the officers. They have collected different, you can talk about forms of money, in forms of money or their assets. So, and they're targeting the officer. It has been particularly alleged that insurgent organization collect monthly donation from the officers. So that's an interesting challenge for the government official as well. Illegal pass of borders, illegal trade, not only individual but also drug is another the larger extent uncontrolled area you can talk about, and that has triggered that particular area. Then further, if you look into insurgent group, various tribal group have been involved in the particularly different war or conflict activities, some of which snowballed into major ethnic counter, which is still going on. And we'll not discuss about much more that, but if you sum up all those tribal group, their association with particularly how their culture impacted by this insurgent group, okay? So still, besides these challenges, we find there are groups with a diversity of culture, a diversity of livelihood practice from agriculture to city, from particularly handmade making paper to particularly craft making. There are different forms of livelihood. They are mostly depend upon the nature for their day-to-day activity, depend upon nature for their particularly livelihood and earning. And this tribal communities of Manipur has particularly come up long way, particularly in terms of education, in terms of social office. Still you find in Manipur, whether it is Arunachal Pradesh or whether in the northeast, you'll find still a disadvantage area to reach out. That another major challenge we can talk about. So the cultural affinity that exists between different groups in Manipur has also led to the difference. Means mostly you can look into nature. It's concerned how nature culture makes us make these tribal groups more prominent or highlighted in this particular. So in the next class, I think we'll discuss about Meghalaya. Any question? I think has Sen, you have a question. I think I did not read. You messaged me. Let me check.
Yes, sir. I raised my hand, but as due to the continuation of the lecture, sir, I didn't pause it or interrupt it, so I dropped the message, sir.
Okay, okay. So the captions 1 minute.
Sir, you have answered the challenges, sir. The challenges that you
Okay,
have
okay,
discussed.
okay.
Only the privileges. What about them? As the government is focusing on the tribes and the scheduled castes, sir, very much, so that there must be some privileges also that have been given to them, like in the form of land reforms. It is understood that
Yes,
yes,
yes, yes, yes, right. Hashim, actually, there is a major challenge in the land because when talking about the community land ownership, when still the community land ownership will practice in this northeast region, and some of the tribes also have the headmanship which are controlling their land, and that actually challenging. If you will not adopt the modern forms of modern way of you can talk about land practice or land settlement. It is very difficult to particularly in the context of any tribal group who are living under the disadvantage or those who are living under the poverty. It is very difficult to further implement. So there should be a government intervention in every sphere. So without government intervention, it is not possible because somewhere or other government is the major hurdle in their development. Because if you visit Northeast, I have good friend in the Northeast, and they have serious challenges. Even for drinking water, they have to brought particularly they have to particularly buy waters for their daily activities. So it's a different. It is in the cities. I'm not talking about any village. Then thought about particularly in a village community, a tribal community who are inaccessible to the urban societies. So it's challenge. It is ultimately it is the government, and you can talk about that. There is a greater role playing by the civil society organization. We generally did not discuss about here, but civil society are playing an important role in particular Northeast. It is not only national or regional civil societies, but international civil society like UNDP, World Health Organization, they are continuously implementing different development programs. If you Google different, particularly UNDP and its assistance to particular Northeast region, you find number of and prolonged period programs. Actually, government is trying, but in the context of conflict, it is very difficult issue. Government needs to more focused on resolving conflict, and the conflict will be resolved when their needs will be fulfilled. Until their needs will not be fulfilled, like we are talking about drugs, if border will be sealed, if there is no immigrant, then obviously because Manipur itself is inhabitant of the different diverse group, which is uh, people have been migrated from different part of the our state as well as from different part of the country. There is a movie I forget. Oh, sir.
So, sir, you were talking about some movies, sir. So then I will
Oh,
inform.
actually, there is a movie. Actually, I forget. Forget the name actually. In movie, they are showing that how drug trafficking actually continuing in the Manipur. Particularly, it is on Manipur Myanmar region. Okay, that's the golden triangle. And they are, that's what they are saying it is the golden triangle of drug house. If it is stopped because there are certain terrain you cannot enter. Our force cannot enter. It is dense forest you can talk about without communication, and that itself is challenge. So, any doubt, Subhangi or Sneha? You want to ask anything? Okay. So next class we will much more
Sir,
discuss.
sir, we have
Sir.
at least few minutes. We have 5-10 minutes. So,
Yes,
sir,
yes.
sir, actually, when I was residing in Delhi, sir, I realized
Okay.
that in Arunachal Pradesh, Irom
Okay.
Sharmila was fighting against, raising voice against the AFSPA. So now Manipur, there is no in Northeast AFSPA is not there, na sir. Armed Force
Sorry,
Special
sorry.
Power.
Repeat the question.
Sir, in around 2012-13, sir, or 14, Irom
Yes.
Sharmila was on what do you call Amran Anchan, that something like that, sir. Fast till death, sir. And at that time, sir, she was uh, raising her voice along with the others and about the Armed Force Special Power Act, sir, that it should be removed from the northeast, full northeast, sir, like the same in Jammu and Kashmir. First, it was removed from Jammu and Kashmir. Then it was, I think, sir. I want to ask that is the Armed Force Special Power Act played a significant role in the sir, uh, in the depressing or suppressing the revolt of the 30 rebellions that got institutions uh, like the free movement, like free Manipur movement or like that. So then again, that Anpo was playing a crucial role, sir. Till that time, all the newses were not coming in the like the Manipur cookie movement and that lady that was dragged in the assault like that, sir. So no such news were coming at that time. Only we had trafficking and everything like that was coming. But now, since I believe that the Armed Force Special Power Act has been removed from Manipur, sir. Is it true, sir?
Mm, I don't have any idea on that, but what I will say is that if you look into the particularly Armed Force Act, actually it is have both negative consequences and positive consequences. So one, it has initially established to maintain a particularly disturbed areas. Okay, how can particularly maintain a public order? But unfortunately, it has you can talk about negative consequences. Okay? It has the armed force or the particularly the groups has been engaged in various particularly you can talk about there is illegal activities as well as which is not particularly you can talk
Yeah.
about to help to maintain the order. So actually, it is actually established to particularly disrupt how can maintain the peace, but the peace is not maintained. Whether it is particularly you talked about particularly Jammu Kashmir, whether okay, which is now revolved around whether if you talked about Northeast region particularly, actually it is not solving the problem. To be very serious, because if there is a act and for special power act, whatever it is, whether it's was I think whether it is I don't remember the year, but if you look into their history, na, it is actually never a way to protect the community. It will create more regulation, na, it will come up with more revolt. If you have to deal with the people most simplest way, like you can make them we can talk about if major development program like sorts will introduce in that area, it will more impacted. Or if government servant, whether it's NGOs, if they are reaching the community, that should be the most priority. They are should be like it should be the participatory approach, and it will implement these acts like armed force act, which are mostly because they will not think anything. They will listen one language, and the language of particularly the political party or the language of the state, and they will act on behalf of the state. They will never listen the community. They will never listen to the community. That's the major challenge of the present form of armed force. They are never listening to the community. And if you look into the history of armed force, and they are actually in India particularly, very few person you will find they are soft spoken. They are particularly dealing with the community very friendly. But these armed forces are trained like that. They have to just come and the particularly show their power in the form of lathi or in the form of bullet or anything. They never try to understand the community. When they are trying to understand the community particularly, then obviously the problem will be solved. No need to any armed act. I think we need to reach out the people. If I are reaching out the people, I'll give an example. Like there are different tribal communities settled in particularly Andaman Nicobar, and particularly there is a uh, one tribal group. What I forget the name actually. Uh, the 1 minute Andaman Island. 1 minute. Sorry. Remember. Sentinels. There is a group, Sentinel group, which is situated from 30 kilometers away from Andaman Island, Andaman Nicobar Island, and in that still we are trying to connect. Okay, I think in 2018-19, someone reached there, some foreigner tried to communicate, and they killed them. They tried two, 3 times to reach there, they killed them by bow and arrow. But here the problem is we are trying to connect. Okay, they did not know our way of lifestyle or our society. But in Andaman itself, there are different tribal communities. They are now accepting our way of lifestyle. We are trying to there are different approach. There is the assimilation approach, there is integration approach, there is particularly there is four approach I think in tribal development, and in different way we can develop the tribal ethnic groups. So in that context, the armed way of dealing with the tribal community is not the way. If are recruiting armed force to keep peace, then because they are more armed than your armed force. They have bow and arrow. Their way of particularly keeping their arms is different. They can kill number of people. But if you try to communicate them, and it is the mostly you can talk about anthropologists, sociologists who are engaging in the tribal studies, they can more interact with them. You have to learn their way of life. Why one people accept you? One people will accept you when you will like or dislike their culture. Okay. If you try to become a human or like any tribal group, you have to learn. When you are going to study any tribal group, you have to learn the language first because we have to interact. We have to learn their culture. We have to learn their, if you are entering into the hill terrain or a tribal group which has no access to road, no access to communication, no access to education. In that context, if you are entering there, you should have mind like they, not the mind of modern society where a jeans shirt, jeans kurta, or a boot or particularly goggle, you need not to because you have to make simple. Be simple so that they will accept you. So like that, whether it is Northeast, whether it any society. Okay. Armed force is not a solution. And solution lies with the community. So you have to visit the community. Whether if armed force will deal the people as their people, obviously the particularly whether it is insurgent, whether it is any crime, whether it is any conflict, it will resolve soon. Because every conflict will resolve with a discussion. It is never resolved with another armed force. Okay, they are fighting for each other land or each other community, and you have to come forward, discuss with them. If you recruit the armed force, obviously, somewhere or other we need armed force to stabilize or to control, but it is not always the way. And government is recruiting them as the way of power, to locate the power, okay, to stop the conflict. But the origin of conflict, why the conflict origin? Why there is a conflict? We need to find out that. And after that, we can discuss.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Another, I think Subhangi or Sneha asking something. I did not read out. Mm,
Sir,
means
saying sir that in
I
Jharkhand,
come from Ranchi. The name right now, but it had a similar issue. The arm had captured. Yes, yes, in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, the insurgent, particular conflict between armed force as well as the community is prevalent because they government consider that is a Naxal prone area, and there is good news, number of news on that even the armed forces are raping the women, so armed forces are particularly doing hazard activity in the community, stealing everything as well as the firing the houses. Okay? So the people are protesting. No, yes. Why? Another thing I forgot, I think Sneha has mentioned, media play a significant role. What media is portraying. Most in our society, if you look into the media, media is mostly biased. There are few media you will find that is neutral. That is particularly you can talk about general issues. But most of the media are you can talk about is politically motivated, and that society generally want to work. And they did not inform. They did not particularly try to inform the issues to the society. Okay. So for today we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll start discussing on the same issues. Okay.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello. Okay, Sneha, Subhangi, Hussain, we'll stop here. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.